Steve Gardner joining us, kind enough to join us on his weekly spot. Does a great job covering baseball for USA Today as he joins us on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Steve, good to talk again, my friend. How you been?
Good, Rich. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm curious. Will you watch the NFL draft tonight?
I will probably switch back and forth between baseball and the NFL draft, but there's some intrigue there, sure.
You have a football team that you follow? I know you're a baseball guy, but I'm just curious if you have a football.
I grew up a Washington Redskins fan, and as hard as it is to continue to follow them and support them, I still do for some reason.
That's what a true fan does. All right, how about the Phillies? Right, a 1-4 start. They've improved to 15-8. They move within a half a game of the Mets. Listen, I don't know. You look at a game like that last night, I don't know, we talk about a statement game, but here's the lesson to be learned, right? The starting rotation has been really good for this team, albeit what scares me a little bit is their defense. They've committed 22 errors in 23 games. It's not going to get it done, but they're winning games where you have guys like Santana, who the numbers aren't there, albeit he walks. Kingery's in a major slump over the last 2 weeks, but they're still winning games, and they're really playing competitive baseball. And I know we've talked about them over the last couple weeks, and even prior to the season. I'm starting to think they have a little more sustainability here. I really do. I'm starting to see something.
Yeah, when you get and Vince Velasquez didn't have a great start, but the last time out. But when you're starting to get guys like Velasquez and Pivetta and those secondary guys that you didn't really know what you were going to get from Aaron Altair, maybe coming up with a big hit. Those kinds of guys, when you can get the secondary guys to contribute on a fairly regular basis, that's when you might have a little bit more sustainability, like you were saying, than we thought maybe originally. But again, there's a lot of untapped potential on this team, and I think we're seeing a good amount of it so far already.
And listen, when you go against some of these teams that we talked about that they have to play in the NL and the NL East, and you're winning some games. I mean, you look at the Nationals, and the Nationals now, aside from an offensive explosion, you look at some of the games that they've lost, they're sitting there at 11-14. The Mets have coming back down to earth a little bit over the last 10. The Braves playing much better baseball, but they're still a young team. Listen, for a month into the season, it does make it more interesting if you're a Phillies fan right now.
For sure. And, I look at, early in the season, generally records, you can say, don't have a whole lot of weight considering how long the season is. But one of the things I look at is run differential. And the Phillies are one of the best teams in the National League. Plus 31 on their run differential, 10-2 at home. I mean, things like that. Those are some really positive signs. And I think for even the most optimistic Phillies fans, we're probably looking at 2019 as the time where they can maybe start to compete and be a force. But right now, the Mets are off to a good start. The Braves, as you said, a surprising start as well, and the Nationals slumping poorly. This National League East could be a much more interesting race than I thought it would be at the beginning of the season.
Early on, they definitely showed a sense of resiliency, have the Phillies, and maybe some of these comments about the manager just kind of staying out of the way. maybe he took that advice. Who knows? You mentioned
he does take advice. He does take a constructive criticism.
He does.
I've seen a lot of people talk about the fact that Gabe Kapler is willing to listen to anybody that may have a valid point, and he takes a lot of people seriously.
Well, and you know what? That's a sign of a guy that maybe gets it then, right? Because if you're open to criticism, you got to take the bullets. But if you're open to criticism and you take it and you change, then it could be a good thing. You mentioned the Nationals. Aside from their offensive explosion last night, the 15 runs against San Francisco, this is a team that came in prior to that game last night. They dropped 5 out of 6. They had a rough series against the Dodgers. We talked about some of their injuries, and I think they mishandled some of these injuries. But again, Harper's numbers are down, right? His average is down, but I guess you give him a free pass because, again, ultimately he's gotten a free pass the first 32 times in 25 games. So the issue to me with the Nationals is who can really protect him in the cleanup spot.
Right, and it's certainly not Ryan Zimmerman, or he hasn't been able to. And, without Anthony Rendon in the lineup, without Daniel Murphy, without Adam Eaton, those guys being injured, and you said they did misplay Anthony Rendon's injury because now he's on the disabled list, going to take at least another week before he comes back, and they could have backdated him and gotten him back if he's able to play. But Zimmerman hitting, under 200, and he's basically the only live bat. Now, obviously, Matt Adams came out and had 6 RBIs last night, but nobody has been consistent. And I think when you have from essentially the 4th spot down to the 9th spot in the lineup of guys that aren't going to be able to produce on a regular basis, teams have no choice but to walk Bryce Harper and not let him beat them. And that's exactly what a lot of the teams, the strategies that they've employed. So I do worry about the Nationals, except for the fact that maybe Rendon comes back in the next week or so. Eaton is on the verge of returning, so that'll give them a couple of bats there. And hopefully for them, they can get some support for Harper, because he's not able to do any damage because nobody else is helping him.
Another team in the NL that's struggling. You look at the Dodgers, and most notably Kershaw. I mean, what's going on with the Dodgers? Kershaw's really struggling on. They've dropped 2 out of 3 from Miami. He's 1-4 on the season, and I know, to be fair, 2 of those losses really didn't get a lot of run support. Is just this team and the pitchers in a rut right now, or are there some more issues with this club?
Yeah, I mean, Kershaw is still pitching effectively. It's just that he's not getting a lot of support. He's just not going deep into games, and I think that's the one thing that when your ace can't go past the 6th inning and you're having to rely on the bullpen again and again. Kenley Jansen has not been great. That also doesn't help them a little bit. But yeah, it's one of those things where the Dodgers just things came together for them last year, and this year they've gotten off to a slow start. Their best hitters, as funny as it is, Matt Kemp, Yasmani Grandal, and Chase Utley are their best hitters so far this season. It's not Corey Seager, it's not Yasiel Puig, any of those guys that they relied on so much last year. And I think that's one of the, and Justin Turner is still out. So yeah, I think the Dodgers again are limping along, but this is a solid team. They got a nice start from their rookie Walker Buehler earlier in the week. We'll see him another time later this week. So there is some hope for them. They have talented players in the farm system, and I think certainly the Dodgers don't have to worry too much, but still, you'd like to get off to a better start. I
want to go back to the NL East for a second, because when you look at the Nationals, they played really just uninspiring baseball. Now, I don't know if it's, when someone says they're missing something, I don't know if it's Dusty Baker. I don't know. You mentioned the injuries. The bullpen has been absolutely horrible, and you made a great point that someone besides Harper needs to produce on offense. To me, if I'm a Nats fan, what would concern me is that the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves look a lot better than they did last year.
Right. And, that's where the Nationals could count on getting their big margin in the division last season, or the last couple of seasons, really. It's just beating up on everybody else in the National League East because they weren't that good. And I think now, you see the Braves, such a great collection of young talent. We saw Ronald Acuna make his debut last night. He looks fantastic. There's a little bit to worry about, I think, for Washington, because the rest of those teams in the division are getting better a lot quicker than maybe they suspected.
I'm starting to think, listen, if the Phillies continue to play like this, and I know they're going to have their hiccups along the way, but maybe they're going to be a player come the trade deadline. Maybe they decide, okay, this is the year, it's open, we make a push in the NL East because Washington's stumbling. But then you look at the Mets, and there's only a handful of teams out there that can basically match, 1-2 punch of, say, like a DeGrom and Syndergaard. Now, you got Harvey in the bullpen, which we talked about this.
Yes, you hit that.
Yeah, well, I mean, once in a while I'll get one right. But I'm starting to think right now, though, the way he's acting, he's not talking to the media. I know Callaway said, listen, he doesn't have to talk to the media. To me, that seems like an extremely volatile situation right now. And I almost get the sense that there's going to be a moment where the Mets actually need him to come out of the bullpen, because I'm not 100% sold on their pitching staff being fully healthy for an entire season. But were you surprised about the demotion?
In terms of performance, no. But in terms of personality management, I was a little bit. And I think that's one of the things, Harvey said before the demotion, I'm a starting pitcher. And I'm sure he sees himself that way. It takes a lot for, number one, Mickey Callaway to go to him and say, actually, you're not one of our best 5 pitchers. We need you in the bullpen. And it does take a little bit of, sheepishness on Harvey's part to go to the bullpen, even though he doesn't really have that much of a choice. He needs to be able to perform, though, and that's the one thing I think he's still coming to grips, as we saw with his reaction to not speaking to reporters after his relief appearance. He's still coming to grips with how he can contribute to this team. I have a very distinct feeling he doesn't like being out of the spotlight and not being one of those people who the team counts on in the clutch situations. But at this point, he's not one of those guys that deserves that spot. So, yes, he'll have to earn it back. I think he possibly could, but, with his health issues, I don't know that we ever see Matt Harvey as a starting pitcher, again, certainly not at the level that he was once upon a time.
Maybe he earns it, or as you said, maybe he gets it back by default because you got Matt's struggling a little bit. They need more from Vargas as well. And really the lineup of late, too, with Cespedes and Bruce. I mean, they got to overcome their slow starts. Again, a couple minutes with Steve Gardner from USA Today joining us on his weekly spot on a Thursday on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline. How about the AL East before we close it out? You look at the Yankees and their offense right now, and everyone seems to be hitting. First of all, did you see, and I don't know who the writer was, but they were talking about the best shortstops in the bigs, and I don't know who it was, so I'm not going to call him out. If I knew who it was, I would call him out. But he didn't even have Didi as top 10.
It might have been, was it Brian Kenny from MLB Network?
No, it wasn't Brian. No, and I if I had him on, I would call Brian out on that. I would definitely debate him on that. I don't know who it was.
He had ranked shortstops before the season, but I don't know. I'll tell you what, though. Didi Gregorius has taken his game up several levels from last year in the postseason, and now, a little subtle difference there that Aaron Boone has done. Do you notice he moved Gregorius into the three spot in between, Judge and Stanton? So that, to me, I think even just that little tweak kind of shows that, this guy is for real. Nobody's done, as a shortstop, what he's done for the first month of the season in terms of home runs and RBIs. He's leading the majors in batting average. It's just amazing to see the transformation he has made offensively, because certainly when the Yankees got him, all they were looking for is somebody to play shortstop and play good defense there, and anything they gave him on that he gave him on offense was a bargain, and boy, is it a huge bargain now.
38 homers in 23 games for the Yankees. Do you get the sense that this offense now is starting to really kick it into high gear?
Oh, yeah, and the other thing, too, to get Gleyber Torres coming up, it's amazing. This guy, talking about Ronald Acuna and all the excitement throughout the game of baseball to see him. Gleyber Torres was essentially Ronald Acuna last year as the number one prospect coming out of spring training. And, he has been able to just kind of seamlessly move into this Yankees lineup, hit in the number 9 spot, not a whole lot of pressure with everybody else playing so well. It just seems like the perfect way to introduce yet another, very, very good offensive player into this offensive juggernaut that's developing.
Yeah, he lit it up in AAA Scranton. So you're right. I mean, it's just, as they say, the rich get richer. And in this regard, they have a ton of prospects as well. So, all right, listen, we got a lot of baseball to cover over the weekend. I know you will enjoy it. If you feel like getting your NFL fix, you can turn on the draft for a couple minutes and then go right back to baseball.
All right, I'll keep that on my little computer screen, and because those picks only come along every 15 minutes. I want to see some real action, some pace of play.
Yeah, right.
Watch baseball.
Yeah, 21 minute at bat or 14-minute at bat with 20 something off pitches. So, all right, my friend, always great stuff. Appreciate it. We'll talk next week, pal.
All right, take care, Rich.
All right, you got it. Steve Gardner from USA Today in his weekly spot, joining us on the Boardwalk Kind of Hotline.